Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FIDE Chess Grand Swiss 2023. This is round 9 out of 11, and it is going to be an insane recap. If you've missed any of the last rounds, let me remind you, the Grand Swiss will crown 2 people and send them to the Candidates Tournament. The Candidates Tournament in chess determines who plays against the World Chess Champion later in that year. We've got Hikaru, we have Fabiano, we've got a lot of other leaders and people playing for first place. Things are really, really heating up. Now, before we get into the games today, I've been promoting a couple of things recently, mostly my book, but also we have a courses sale that ends later today, 25% off, because we've launched the Tactics Masterclass. And this next part, if you're a kid, K-12, 12th grade or under, or you have a kid, you may want to pay attention to this. I'm going to be involved with Chess Kid. Chess Kid is the kid-friendly version, basically, of Chess.com for the Chess Kid National Festival. And this is going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina in early 2024. My ticket that you can get is you'll be basically doing a lot of activities with me involved, including getting a signed copy of my book. I'm going to be there for 4 days. So I'm going to be doing announcements. I'm going to be doing various group activities. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, it's in Charlotte. So if you live in Charlotte, or if you live anywhere close to Charlotte within driving distance or flying distance and you want to stay a couple of days, going to be a very, very fun event. The first large-scale, kid-friendly chess event that Chess Kid like this has put on at this scale. And I'm going to be there, and there's going to be a lot of other people there, like Daniel Naroditsky. So, yeah, if you're like 30 and you don't have kids, don't show up. That's weird. Don't do that. That we might call the police. But if you're, unless you're like a journalist or something, but if you have a kid or you are a kid, definitely stop by. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be puzzle competitions. There are going to be chess tournaments to play. There's going to be a lot of competitive stuff, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of other activities that, aren't chess. So, yeah, link is in the description, and that's all I have to tell you. It's quite far away, I know, but so are the candidates. And here you are watching these games. Hikaru Nakamura versus Ivan Cheparinov. Now, fun fact about Ivan Cheparinov, which you can look at after this recap, there's a video of him playing against Nigel Short. There's a clip on YouTube, and he was involved in he didn't want to shake hands with his opponent. They had a beef, and he was forfeited for not shaking hands. I don't know if that's a thing in any other sport, but imagine in a football match you end and you don't shake hands. Do you get fined? That's crazy. Anyway, so I've known about Cheparinov for many years. Very good player. And in this game, Hikaru played e4, e5, knight f3, and Cheparinov played a Petrov defense. Hikaru took on e5, went back, and then already here played a very big surprise for me. And I really love this. Hikaru's been playing a lot of interesting openings in this tournament. He didn't play d4, which is the main line. He didn't play knight c3, which is the other main line. He played c4, which I have played myself, but not at the Grand Swiss playing for the candidates. His opponent develops his bishop, and now Hikaru plays d4. And that's interesting because, I generally thought that after bishop e7, white kicks out the knight. Now you can play d4, and you've kind of stopped black from playing d5, and sort of the setup is designed to, if black castles, bishop d3, and then black might play knight back, but instead he just plays d5 anyway, completely unafraid. Now, the interesting thing, if you look at the time spent, Hikaru spent 3 minutes on the third move, and that's interesting, because I suppose he might have been surprised by something, or he was playing poker, maybe he was just pretending to be surprised, right? Bluffing that he has some sort of hole cards, right? Because look at Cheparinov. He hasn't spent any time. And Hikaru just blitzing. And now, an interesting fact about this position as Hikaru brought his knight out and the pawn structure got clarified, Hikaru has an IQP, isolated queen's pawn, no c, no e pawn. He wants to advance that pawn forward. He wants to use the squares around the pawn to try to put pressure on his opponent. His opponent wants to block that pawn and then make it immobile, trade a bunch of pieces. Now, apparently this position was reached in a game Caruana Giri from 12 years ago, in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of Anish Giri's best tournaments, if what I read was correct and I am not misremembering. Anyway, remember, black is going to try to retreat, trade some pieces, block Hikaru from playing d5. Hikaru goes here, plays rook e1, we trade bishops, and then he plays knight to a5, putting some pressure on that pawn, hoping for b6, which is not going to happen. But knight b6, and he develops. And now Cheparinov sacrifices the b7 pawn. So basically, Ivan says, all right, man, look, you can take on b7, because I don't really want to defend it passively. So you do. I centralize my queen. You now have to come back. And then I kick out your knight. So Cheparinov says, you know what? I'm fine being a pawn down. That's it. I'm fine being a pawn down. And I'm just going to put pressure on your position. Rook e8. Now, did he have to do that? Did he have to sacrifice the pawn? No. He probably could have played rook b8. I think he just really didn't want to. I mean, I just think he thought he was going to be very passive and not massive. And this way, he's not passive and he's definitely massive. So, queen d3. And I mean, now it's basically like, look, like knight c5, interesting tactics here. Knight takes, pawn takes. And there's this very big moment here of tension. And now it's all gone, right? Hikaru just trades knights, trades rooks, and has to now win this endgame. Somewhere, Magnus is sitting there watching, going, I wonder if Hikaru can do this. I can't do a Norwegian accent, so I don't actually know how Magnus thinks. But I do know that they don't actually call him Magnus in Norwegian. Did you know that? They actually call him Magnus, which is like, it's like Mangnus, like Angus, but Agnes, Magnus. So I could be Norwegian. I mean, listen, I fit the part. You just got to change my name to Freud, like, and then put a sen at the end of it, you know, Computersen, and I'll be Fjord Computersen. And there you go. Now I'm Norwegian. Magnus Carlsen. Rook d1. Anyway, that was a little weird Norwegian interlude. And now Hikaru just has to win this endgame. Rook knight 5 versus rook knight 4. And let me tell you something. Ivan Cheparinov was not in the business of throwing this endgame. My man defended it absolutely in a breathtaking way. He pushed Hikaru backwards. Knight c1. Rook went there and they danced around a little bit. Now, an interesting fact arose a little bit later. Actually, excuse me, a little bit earlier. There was a moment here in this. There was a moment. It happens a little while later. Nope, I'm missing the moment. Hikaru could have played rook to d5 instead of something that he did instead. I'm going to find that move for you. Might have been... No, it was not here. I can't remember where it was. It was here. Here. Right here. Yes. There was a moment that Hikaru was winning. This is the only move considered in the entire game where Hikaru made any sort of inaccuracy. And it's because he had to find rook d5, which walks into a fork, but then keeps an eye on the rook so you can't actually take it. And then if something like rook to a2 is played, you can actually play rook takes a5. And if black plays something like knight to d3, threatening rook to f2, white can basically like give a check and escape and then try to advance with these two pawns. But there's a very long sequence of moves there, which will result in you probably losing this pawn but advancing these, so it's not very easy to do that. And instead of playing rook to d5, because there was some sequence there where black could have probably defended a little bit more precisely, Hikaru just went for this endgame where he's threatening a checkmate, and then he wins the a5 pawn. And Stockfish can defend this endgame for a very long time as black, but Cheparinov rushes, and he should not have traded into a rook endgame. Let that serve as a lesson to you. You have got to be 100% certain that trading into a rook endgame is going to be a draw. Cheparinov did not have a huge amount of time on the clock, I think. And what he should have done is he should have just kept the knight on the board. But I think he just basically thought he was going to lose no matter what. He just thought this pawn was going to come up no matter what. And he goes into a rook endgame, and this is just losing. This is losing because white advances his king, white trades these pawns, and white is basically just going to win that pawn while not losing the a pawn. Rook d6, a6, and king d4. And in this position, Cheparinov resigned. Because rook a4 check, king c5. Rook takes, a7, and something like king b6, and the game is over. If this, king b7, g3, rook d3, a8 queen. There's nothing you can do. Hikaru Nakamura is now tied for first at the Grand Swiss with 2 rounds to go. And he won this game in nearly perfect style. I mean, there was one moment in that game that the engine was like, well, actually,
Hikaru. You should have played the move rook to d5, you see. I thought rook b7 was not the best move.
For all intents and purposes, Hikaru played a great game, and somewhere the endgame god that is Magnus Carlsen gave a thumbs up. So a really nice game from Hikaru. Now, there was battles all over the place. This is a game for first place, and this one did not go how you would expect it to go. Fabiano Caruana, Bogdan Daniel Deac just got into a tie for first place, and Fabiano plays a pretty big sideline of the Italian, which is this very early and aggressive bishop g5 and h4, and the idea is to provoke black into doing this. The idea is to wave a red flag in front of a bull. So guess what? That is exactly what happens. Fabiano invites a fistfight, and a fistfight is what he's got. And here comes knight h7 ready for h5 and g4. Black just says, all right, I mean, I'm going to support my pawns and I'm going to push them. Fabi now has to act quickly, so he puts pressure on the knight and then plays this. Look at Deac, by the way. Deac is not even thinking. He hasn't spent any time. This is the first time he thought, and I think he was debating between knight here and h5. And h5 is a move, and then there's a line here which goes h4, g4. You can't go here because you'll get your knight trapped in many lines, so you have to come here. But Deac plays knight g6 straight away, and now Fabi plays knight to e3. So we have a very tense position because it's basically like, look, is Deac going to advance these pawns and checkmate Fabi? Or is Fabi going to make Deac look silly, right? So if black plays h5 here, white gets the knight to f5. Then black can play queen f6. And then white will play something like h4. And then if you play too slowly, I plug these knights and then, you know, takes. I have bishop f7 and white is winning. So queen d8. He goes here. h3, now h5. And Fabi decides that Deac has no idea how to play chess, and he just plays on the total opposite side of the board. Like, this is some of the most disrespectful chess I've ever seen. Dude is literally telling you, I am going, like, come out of the house with your hands up, Fabi. And Fabi's like, yoink and boink, playing on literally the complete opposite side of the board. While this dude is standing over here like, I'm gonna beat you up, you bozo, if you don't. And here comes g4. Here comes g4, take, Fabi slides back to h2, and I gotta tell you, this looks really nice. Look at Bogdan, and suddenly things are looking very dire for Fabi. I don't know how he's gonna deal with the incoming attack. Bishop takes, the knight is coming to f4, maybe f5 in the future as long as you don't blunder your king. King g7, rook h8, by the way, hello. Oh my goodness. And Fabi just keeps going on the queen side. It's like a poker player. I mean, right, it's like triple, when you triple down. When you bet pre-flop, you bet on the flop, you bet on the turn, you bet on, what is that, triple barrel, triple bullet, I think it's not triple barrel. What even is a triple barrel? I don't know. And Fabi's just like only playing on that side of the board. Meanwhile, Deac is just coming in. He takes the knight. Now he's just a pawn up, just a clean pawn up. Fabi has to trade queens, takes and takes. But kudos to Fabiano, because he kind of stopped black's attack for a pawn cost, and now he just keeps going. And apparently, instead of king g7, black had to go here. That was a major moment in this game. He had to get rid of this bishop. And then Fabi would have had to sack a pawn. What? And the idea of sacrificing the pawn is that black's got very weak pawns. So rook f6, rook d8, and white suddenly continues to attack. Well, that's kind of what happens when 4 out of 5 of your major pieces are standing on the back rank, and one of your 5 major pieces that isn't standing on the back rank is just stranded, just locked itself outside of its apartment, right? I mean, like knight c6, where's the knight going? I mean, knight b3 is a little too slow, buddy. It's not going to work. So Fabiano does a very nice job here cooling off the black attack and then continues to fire. Bogdan plays bishop d7, right? A, b, c6. And like all good games that had a lot of explosives and tension, at some point what's going to happen is the players are going to fizzle out. They start trading a lot of pieces, a lot of pawns come off the board, and let's not forget, Fabi's down a pawn. So to win it back, he's got to make some trades. Both guys trade off more pawns, rook and 2 versus rook and 2 with bishop and knight. And Fabi did a very nice job here. One more thing, he pressured Bogdan Daniel on the clock. You see, 18 minutes versus 30 seconds. That does not feel very good. It's very difficult to claim you have an advantage when you're down 29 minutes to 4, okay? He did his best, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're cheering for, nothing happens in this game. Fabi in a tiny bit of danger, got out of it very quickly, and these players are also tied for a draw. Yesipenko versus Vidit Gujarati. was another game that ended in a draw. And the winner of this game, out of nowhere, emerging in a tie for first place. Out of nowhere. D4. Parham Maghsoodloo of Iran versus Alexei Sarana, Russian Grandmaster currently representing Serbia. This game, a lot of pieces get traded off early. But we have a very common Nimso Indian, where black is going to play rook to c8 and is going to play rook to d8, firing down on these files. Parham is going to try to open up the position, maybe create an attack, maybe utilize something over here. Here comes rook d8, here comes rook c1, and the knight goes to transfer over there. Parham, knight e5, and trades off the knight, and plays queen to b3. Now, queen c6 threatens mate. Shockingly, white is not going to blunder it, so that accomplishes nothing. Instead, we have bishop c6, fighting for the light squares, and queen b7 potentially coming in the future. Wow, Gotham, how did you know that? f3. White says, you can't get me. Also, you can't actually touch any of my position. And very simply, white, in the future, would like to play rook d2, rook d1, e4, d5. So, for example, if black goes king h8, rook d2. King here, here. King h8, e4. King here, d5. Now white is winning. That is the way white is going to build up a plan in this position. White doesn't always want to take on c5, but in some lines it might not be the worst thing. Why? Because after takes, it's actually shockingly difficult for black to defend the c5 pawn. Black has to, like, really bend over backwards to do that. And none of us want to really see that. So, rook d2. Takes, queen a5. You see Sarana firing at the center. Parham staying solid, right? Wants to advance. Very tense position. Can Parham break through? This is known as the hanging pawn structure. So when you have DC versus EB, both of black's rooks are staring at the pawns. Can white move anything? A4, he's trying. Rook c7. Now he plays a5, the little decoy, little pawn sacrifice. Instead of rook c7, the computer wanted knight e8. Can't explain that move, not going to. Rook c7, a5. And now that pawn gets traded, but he's left black with a bit of a weakness. And keep in mind, my friends, the only way white is going to win this game is by advancing here, or something crazy is going to happen somewhere else. All right, maybe something else is going to happen. Queen e3, he's still preparing. Queen a3, uh-oh. Who's guarding the pawn? I got news for you. He's giving it up. But he's trying to create counterplay, so Parham has to block. Kicks out the queen. Okay, still nothing. Nothing, okay. Queen b4, slow and steady. At some point, something's gonna have to move. We're going to an endgame. Queens and bishops versus queen, bishop, knight. But now in comes the queen. Very tough position to defend. Parham advances with yet another pawn. The constant threat of these pawns is making it very difficult for black to do anything else. Queen a8, king h2, the king is safe. Bishop d2, rerouting backwards. Queen c7. Look, I'm telling you, the second that white pushes one of these pawns, the game is going to be in a critical situation. And on move 53, after many preparatory moves, c5 occurred. And yes, black can play queen e1 check. But after king to h3, queen h1, you just cocoon. This is crazy. Look at this. The knight can't get close. The bishop somehow can't get close. The pawn could try, but after takes, the pawn also can't get close, and I'll play c6. So it happened. I told you. That move, we were preparing for that move for some 20 moves. The sides clash, the king hides, the knight is going to fall, the pawn is going to promote. Ladies and gentlemen, 62 moves. 62 moves. But the game is over because he's threatening bishop f5, and after you take, d5. And nobody can stop the pawns. Looks like black has counterplay, but I come here, then I come here, and I play d7, and the game is over. Yes, b4 looks possible, and looks like you, but I'm always queening first. I am always queening first. And so after d5, Sarana resigned, and Parham Maghsoodloo out of nowhere, tied for first place, 6.5 points out of 9. Crazy stuff. Absolutely crazy stuff. Now, this game, on the women's side, also somebody fighting for first. And then we will give you a major update about Ramazan Jalmakhanov, your favorite chess player of all time. Antoinette Stefanova playing against Vaishali Rameshbabu. She is the older sister of one Pragnananda Rameshbabu, and she recently got her third Grandmaster norm, and she's destroying this tournament, but she may get slowed down by the veteran experienced player Antoinette Stefanova. Vaishali is some 20 points away from the Grandmaster title. She just needs to cross 2,500. And against this obscure move order choice in the opening, she plays b5. And the idea of b5 is to stop white from playing c4. Now white still tries to play c4, but now black gets to play an peasant. Takes d5, and white advances, gets the knight to c6, and trades off this bishop with takes. Queen b7. White is going to be able to secure Vaishali's bishop. Vaishali, of course, castling here is principled, but black plays energetically. c5. Trying to get white to take, so she could quickly activate her pieces. Takes. Now we have the following position. Both sides hate castling here. By the way, kids are watching. The same kids that might go to the Chess Kid National Festival. More info in the description. Castles, c takes, knight takes. This is our position. Very boring, actually. Same exact structure on both sides. Not much to play for. At some point, white is going to have to castle. She still refuses to castle. The knight now goes to... No, the knight doesn't go anywhere. Look at that. The queen is hitting this knight. If pawn takes... Actually, this is a Zwischenzug, in between check, and then you take the knight. But are we heading for a game where both sides are going to trade the pieces? The knight is getting pinballed around, and finally white castles. Rook c5, rook c1, rook c8. Very tense position. And here white can play e5. And the idea of e5 is there's pins all over the place. And also, if knight takes e5, you can play rook takes. And you say, well, what is the big deal? Apparently, knight d4 is the big deal. The knight is hanging, and it's actually very difficult to defend. The other idea of this is you activate the rook. So, for example, knight c7, rook b7, rook c1 check, bishop comes back, and white is actually very happy, according to the Stockfish dude. All right? According to the Stockfish dude. But she goes here. And now, sensing her opportunity, Vaishali decides with 7 minutes on her opponent's clock, it's time to attack. This is a declaration of hostilities. Vaishali got up from the board at this point and punched her opponent square in the face. No, she didn't. She's a very nice person. Also, the police would have been involved. I don't know if there are any police on the Isle of Man, but maybe like 3 officers. 2 are asleep. One just works one works a shift at a time. h5. And then here comes the knight. Queen a3 stops knight f3 check. No, it doesn't. Because if takes, then this. So the king has to go here. Now in comes the knight. Now the position is still equal, but they got 5 minutes on the clock. White trades rooks. Black takes back. Rook d1. Vaishali escapes with an extra pawn. But here comes queen f3. They're both playing the top computer moves. Rook e5, top computer move. Vaishali is a pawn up. But the reason why white has so much compensation here is black's position is a little bit in disarray. She's defending herself, but she's got a lot of weaknesses. Knight to d4, very tense game. Queen b7, yet again the top computer move. Knight to f3, very natural, but she loses the pawn. What she needed to play here was she actually had to go here. Queen a6, and then knight f3 attacking. Why? Because that would have deflected the rook from the defense of the knight. The best move would have been rook d5. Takes, queen b8 check, king h7, and this. And apparently, despite being a pawn down, white is so active, black has no winning chances. But instead of that, in a time trouble, she goes here, and she loses the pawn on a5. And she tries to do the same sequence, but she's just down 2 pawns now. And Vaishali, with a minute on her clock, the players both make the 40th move. Vaishali's 2 pawns up in an endgame. She is 2 pawns up in an endgame, and she pushes the pawn all the way down to a2. White's king has to hide. And here comes Vaishali. All the pawns flying down the board. White can't take with the rook because black's rook is going to move. h4, h3 check, the king hides. But it's over. This is a Zugzwang position. If white moves the rook, that way black will move and promote. If white takes, black will go here and promote. And if white goes that way, black goes here. In this position, Stefanova resigned and Vaishali wins again. She is now 24-92. She is in first place alone. 7 points out of 9. She is the winner in both sections so far with 2 more rounds to go. And the last game that I have for you, she's also 8 points away from becoming a grandmaster. The incredible run of Ramazan Jalmakhanov is not to be ignored. Yesterday, he drew against Sam Shankland, 2,700. He's drawn against Sarana, 2,700. Sevion, 2,700. Ali Reza, 2,780. Anish Giri, 2,760. A win over Bassam Amin, 2,680. And Alan Pichot, 2,650. His only loss of the tournament is to Vladimir Fedoseev. This game against Duda gets another 2,730 rated opponent. We have an Italian. We have a structure where a very quick opening expansion occurs with d5. Ramazan has equalized, but it's a very tense position. Look at Duda. Knight f5, inducing a move, and comes back. Now, in this position, probably black should take. Black also has this interesting move, c4. And if takes, you can take with the knight. You can take like this. And after a long sequence, the computer claims black is actually doing very well despite being a pawn down. But Ramazan plays bishop c7, and we get a position that explodes, completely explodes in the center of the board. You gotta be very, very precise here. He takes, Duda takes back, and now apparently black can just go here. Looks very unpleasant because of this, but after this, apparently everything is well protected, and black is doing okay. But instead of taking first, Ramazan plays knight f4, and that allows an extra option for Duda to take with the knight. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And yes, Ramazan gets his knight to d3. And yes, he gets his pawn back. But white has too much activity. He has good pressure. He has pressure over here. f4, f5, h4, h5, knight h5, knight f5. A lot of good, interesting attacking possibilities. And unfortunately, Ramazan gets lost in the complications. And it's over before it begins. Bishop e3. He tries to trade the queen. The queen activates. He plays queen b5, and the bishop hits the queen, and there is nothing black can do. If he plays queen d, he could take on b2, free pawn. But after this, he's going to lose the knight, and if he plays queen d5, just f4. Queen's caught in no man's land. And unfortunately, the ridiculous run of the Kazakh 20-year-old has been halted for now. He's lost his second game. He's looking a little bit shakier than he did earlier in the event, but he's got 2 more rounds to make up for it. I hope he can get at least 1 more draw and at least another win against the 2600, because I'm not ready for the journey to end. This was his, obviously, his worst game of the tournament. I'm not insulting the guy. I'm just saying, objectively speaking, after such a crazy run, he nearly was undefeated for 8 rounds. But now he can rest, and we are all cheering for him. I mean, I'm cheering for him. I don't know about you guys, all right? I'm cheering for the guy. So, that's all I have to say. Round number 9 in the books. Let's get a little standings update here. Andrei Yesipenko, Hikaru, Vidit, Fabiano, Bogdan Daniel Deac, and Barham Maghsoodloo 6.5 out of 9. And then we have 6 more players tied with them, tied with each other with 6. Any of these players can qualify. This is unbelievable stuff. This tournament is going to have a crazy conclusion. And on the women's side, we have Vaishali standing alone. 7 points with 2 people with 6.5. Anna Muzichuk, Tan Zhongyi. We have a group of 6-pointers, a group of 5.5. Vaishali stands alone, and with another win or 2, she's going to get that Grandmaster title. Woo, amazing stuff. My friends, friendly reminder, if you made it this far, 25% off course sale ends tonight. That's if you'd like a course, but the most important thing, put this on your calendar. Kids, talk to your parents about this. It's in February of next year. Parents, talk to your kids about this. And if you are 30 years old and you have no kids, you cannot attend. Because, sorry. That's all I have for you. I'll see you for Grand Swiss round 10. Now get out of here.